Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and this is Maggie. And today's topic is Bizarro World. We live in a crazy world. There's so much craziness, real craziness happening in the world. And the question for today is what's a sane response to a crazy world? How do we interact with it? And find our way. So before we dig into that topic, let's just take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen just flooding your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream and nourishing every cell, every organ, bringing vital life energy. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, any stress, any negativity. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant bright light lighting you up from the inside out, lighting up every cell, energizing every electron, every molecule, bringing vital life energy to all your cells, all your electrons, all your molecules. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining stress, tension, fatigue, negativity. And now let's just gently press our palms together and just very softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel how delicious that sensation is, and bring yourselves present right here, right now. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome, welcome, welcome to everybody else who's joining us. It's great to be here with you. Um, Today we're talking about Bizarro World. So I know I I have a friend who's who has a family member going through some very intense uh, issues relating to mental health. And good morning, Dennis. Welcome, welcome. And in conversation with this friend, I was reminded of a book that I read years and years ago called The Divided Self by R.D. Lang. And I read it when I was a teenager, trying to make sense of a crazy world. And it's really, I don't remember the details of the book. I just know that it had a huge impact on me. And the premise was that it's not crazy to respond to a crazy world with craziness. It's like when people get depressed because of things that are going on in the world, or act out, or have some less than positive behaviors, self-harm kinds of behaviors. It's kind of, in a way it's sort of a sane response to an insane world. It's like, this is there are things in the world that are intolerable, or impossible to figure out how to make sense of or to cope with. Good morning, Lisa. Welcome, welcome. So I know we're typically very positive in this time in the morning, and I'm not looking to go all negative on you. I am looking to acknowledge that this has been a very challenging time for so many people. Good morning, Gia. Wonderful to have you here. We're talking about Bizarro World, and how so much of what's going on in the world is kind of incomprehensible, and it has been for a while. I remember, for me, during um, the last presidency, I felt like I was living in Bizarro World, and where people were saying up is down and down is up, and how do you make sense of it? And now with COVID, there's so much conflicting information, and there's censorship that's happening, and factions, and all kinds of conspiracy theories, and the isolation that people have experienced, and the health consequences, and the financial consequences, and mixed messaging, and people accusing other people of doing the things that they're actually doing themselves. And I recognize that. Good morning, Robert, welcome. That it can be very, very, very difficult to navigate the crazy, because this is a time of extremes that I at least that I see, and where people are saying up is down and down is up in many cases. And I've had this conversation recently about Bizarro world, with multiple people, and it's something that, especially those of us who are sensitive to this. I mean, yesterday we were talking a bit about how empathic people pick up on the energy in the field, let's call it. And it's interesting to me to try and look at what's a sane response into a crazy world. So good morning, Tammy, welcome. um, Thank you. This is a shawl, and I found it when I was in New Orleans, or it found me. Couldn't resist it. Saw it across the street, in a shop window. Had to go and have it. Lisa says, you know how they show two parallel worlds, good and bad? I feel like we're starting to mesh a little too much. Yeah, it's like a foot in each, and it's like, oh my gosh, your head spins, right? To try and figure out how to make sense of things. And Gia says, I've been seeing my anxiety being triggered through the day. I'm looking forward for hope and how to see this now. And how to see this now. Yeah, so interesting. I'm sorry that you're feeling anxious today and triggered. And again, it may be that there's sort of something in the air. Uh, and that may be literal too, like when we think about, um, I'm really talking more on a frequency level, but I found it really interesting in a conversation about this Bizarro world thing with a friend who was talking about having been very involved in the protests in Columbus, Ohio, the Black Lives Matter protests in Columbus, Ohio, and the Columbus police were really aggressively violent to the protesters. And in fact, so much so that now the mayor of Columbus has asked for support from the federal government, because the police force has been deemed to be unmanageable, and like a rogue faction. And so now they're receiving help. But the thing is that at the time that this was happening, in Columbus, my friend was involved with a group of other people that wanted to pretend it wasn't happening. And so their response to the insanity that was going on in the context of these protests was pretend that it didn't exist. And it reminded me a lot of a situation with my dad years ago when he was a veterinarian. He considered himself a man of science, and I demonstrated muscle testing that I could talk to his body by testing his arms. This was, oh my gosh, more than 30 years ago. And he literally pulled his arms away from me and said, "You can't tell me that you got any kind of communication from my body." I said, "You just experienced it. Are you going to tell me that you're more committed to believing, keeping your beliefs intact than you are to your own experience?" You know, it was so threatening to him to imagine that muscle testing could work that he was like, "No, it doesn't exist." And I think that that's one of the ways that so many of us respond to what's going on in the world. Gia says, "How did you all overcome the anxiety?" I want to know from you, Mira, as well as I am here to see what can I work on now. So you know, when I have had anxiety, and I've had moments, um, certainly in the past, of having anxiety that I just really couldn't shake. And even if I allowed myself to feel it, so that's the first thing that I recommend, is to see if allowing yourself to feel the feelings in your body without judgment, without resistance, then allows those feelings and that experience to move. It may or may not. Um, Another thing that can be really, really helpful is breathing, deep breathing. And that can be very, very calming, to be focusing on your breath and putting your attention on your breath. And yesterday, I think it was yesterday, we talked about tapping, and tapping can be a tremendously powerful way to work with anxiety, you know, to because there's this physical energy that's happening. And maybe doing some exercise to get yourself physically tired, that could help a lot as well, Gia. You know, to use that anxious energy, that over energy, and expend it, you know, like working out or doing yoga or doing something physical that moves the energy. Another thing to do, and this might sound crazy, but take a cold shower and stay under the cold shower as long as you can. And what'll happen is that you'll get so focused on the cold that it'll shift your body. It'll get the blood moving. It'll get endorphins moving in a different way through your body, and that can possibly be helpful as well. Lisa says, "I was at a friend's on Sunday. Her and her husband have been married a long time. We were having a good time. They were drinking, and boom, it all exploded. And it was so hard to watch because they never get that rabid. The energy became toxic. There was no way I could read. There was no way I could read. I was ready to leave, but instead had my other friend take the husband away from the area. It was, as you said, bizarro. It was also very hard to watch." Yeah, so this is the kind of experience that so many of us are having, where things can turn on a dime, and all of a sudden, you know, something happens out of nowhere that was completely unforeseeable, unpredictable, incomprehensible. And what do we do in the face of that? How do we navigate this craziness that you can't intervene with, in, you know, like that, um like seeing people behave in certain ways that are explosive, particularly, you know, just out of nowhere. Like it kind of warps your experience of what's real, what's not real. Like, how do you make sense of this? Gia says, I have asthma. I wrestle with asthma as well, Gia. Still, I'm trying to cold shower. It's good. Yes, a cold shower is really powerful and very revitalizing. I discovered it or rediscovered my will to do it a while ago, a couple weeks back, and I've been doing it, and it's very invigorating and kind of changes your mood. And that's awesome that you do that. And welcome, Tammy. Great to have you here. So we have Tammy Fisk and Tammy Martin, Tammy 2 or Tammy Squared. Great to have you guys here. So what's a sane response to a crazy world? So Lisa, I'm glad that you didn't leave. I'm glad that the husband got removed from the situation. But things like that, it's just like, wow, how do you navigate that? How do you come back from that? It's Maggie's really got her own opinion about all of this. She's running a commentary in the background here, but it's really perplexing. Like out of nowhere, how do we navigate these moments? They're like moments that throw us off of center, and it takes a while to find your footing. And how do we do that? What's a sane response to a crazy world? So Robert says, replying to Gia, a good thing that helps with asthma is deep breathing exercise. So I found that too, Robert. And if you focus when you're breathing, if to focus your attention to breathe deep into your belly and expand. Oh, excuse me, part of deep breathing here. Expand your belly first, and then as your belly expands, then breathe up into your chest. So breathe into your belly first, and then as that expands, then fill your lungs all the way up, and then exhale with some force, some intensity. It doesn't have to be forced, but some intensity, and then just keep breathing that way for a while. Really, really, really powerful. Thank you, Charmy. Well, or maybe it's Charmaine. Welcome. I haven't seen your name here before. Thank you, Robert. Yes, so it's powerful exercise for asthma, and it's also a powerful exercise for countering anxiety. This breathing technique that I just described and that Robert was recommending. And I I think that the way to find sanity in a crazy world is to find our way back to our center. And that's really challenging sometimes because these circumstances can just completely knock us off base, knock us off center. And the thing that has happened for me in those moments is just falling into a loop of, I just don't understand. I don't understand how this could be. I don't understand how this circumstance could have happened. I don't understand how people can think that way. And somehow, somewhere, there is a place from which you can, or in which you can, make peace with it not making sense. Because we talked yesterday about how humans are meaning making machines, but sometimes it just doesn't make sense, and it's hard to figure it out, and we can make ourselves mad trying to figure it out. And there's a point at which there we can allow for the fact that it doesn't make sense, and there's no amount of trying to figure it out that is going to correct it. And we can let it be as it is, making no sense. So Lisa says, afterwards, I told her, your friends that love you are so hurt by this. Plus, every time they yelled, she winced in pain. I tried to explain you can talk, but to be careful because some things can't be taken back. Her other friend there was a widow and tried to explain from that perspective. Lisa, it sounds like it was a pretty traumatic event that happened, and it impacted you very intensely. It sounds like as well, and the other people there too. Yeah, it's interesting how there's a momentum that can come out of nowhere, like an explosive momentum, and it has its own life. And then we get to figure out how to integrate these situations. I woke up at like 3 or 2 in the morning this morning, and I just spent hours just sort of in the bathtub, um, kind of meditating and ruminating and going through periods of my life, and seeing how nuts I was, like how I really acted out in so many ways in my life, um, out of pain or confusion or self-hatred or all different kinds of things in my life. And what was wonderful about these ruminations was being able to allow them without having to justify them, without judging myself for them, without making myself uh, guilty, bad, wrong, to as another friend of mine at one point said, to be able to tolerate the awareness of these ways that I behaved in different circumstances at different times in my life, and to just be an observer, like a compassionate observer, and to see all these things that in the past carried with them a crippling shame for me. So to be able to observe these things from a place of neutrality, I think that that's kind of how we can find sanity in the midst of the crazy. And Gia says, you're you're like awesome, Mira. I wonder how much you've gone through, so much, and still you're here. You're beyond my words. Gia, you're so kind. You really are. And the thing is that so many of us, we go through these things. I think in this community particularly, the people here are very sensitive. And as sensitive people, we register things so much more deeply than people that are not sensitive in that way. And so the things that might just roll off somebody else's back end up being experienced as traumas for us, because we're sensitive to those things. And so Lisa says, without attaching to the experience. Yes, to be able to be sort of a neutral observer, um, is I, I I I think that that's the place of sanity, like to be able to be present, and when we're present, we're able to hopefully to be more responsive, more response able, um, And I think that the sensitives among us are kind of the canaries in the coal mine. You know, like we process a lot of the pain of the world. You know, that by elevating ourselves, by healing ourselves, we help to raise the frequency of the planet. And I think that it's normal in so many ways to have a response to the world, you know, when there are things that we see that are so devastating, to be brokenhearted. I understand that. I've been through that, and I'm sure you have as well. But we can't function from that place of brokenheartedness on ongoingly. Um, so Lisa says the cords are cut in this experience. I'm so glad to hear that, Lisa, because it sounds like it was super, super, super intense. Lisa says, I went home and saged. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. I mean, it sounds like there were sparks flying, and good to go back and clear your own field. I mean, that's what we have a responsibility to do, is to maintain as much presence and clarity as we possibly can. So Jesus says, I reminded myself today many times that we are meaning making machines. And you said we are responsible means responsible. Yes. Um, yes, responsible. So to, it's interesting. So this friend, who was very active in the protests, has also become very, very engaged with the community of people in Columbus who have no home, no house. He calls them houseless. We've spoken about this before, rather than homeless. And what I recognize is that being on the front lines of this, the ugliness with the Columbus police, and seeing the darkness, the pain, the suffering of so many people, and the violence and from the police force. And I don't know that I have the capacity for that. I don't know that I could do that. I think it would destroy me. And we each have our own capacity for pain. And I think if we can preserve ourselves and maintain our presence, the ability to be present, then we allow ourselves to still be available to make a difference where we can, if that makes sense. And so navigating Bizarro world, I'm gonna suggest that the way that we do that is by finding our center again and again and again. You know, I have that image in my head of one of those, like a blow up clown punching bag, where you hit it and it goes down and then pops back up again, and you hit it and it goes down and it pops back up again. And it's kind of like that's kind of the way that we respond or can function or can continue to function in a crazy world. It's by cultivating resilience. And there's so many, like, what's happening with social media and some of the uh, science and information and conflicting information and censorship around COVID is something that I am seeing really as part of Bizarro world. I don't know how to navigate it, and I can't fathom what might be behind it. And back to what we were talking about in the very beginning from this book, The Divided Self, what he says is that it's normal. I mean, it's sane to to um, to get depressed about the way that things are in some respect. But even if it's sane, it's not sustainable. It's not something that we can live with ongoingly. And I, I, I think what we get to do is to find our center, find the place inside a place of peace, and move from that place of groundedness. Lisa says ground, center, and protect. Very important during this time, especially for an empath. So I agree with you, Lisa. And I think that that strengthening our field, our own field, is is the key. More than external protections. I find that coming from strength rather than fear. I've seen so many healers uh, wearing all kinds of um, amulets and stuff to protect themselves. And I find that if we strengthen our core, that if we align our chakras, if we strengthen our field, that is the best protection. That if we ground ourselves in wholeness rather than fear, that that's our strength. Centering ourselves, finding that place of alignment. So Robert says, so true. It all depends on the pain threshold that each one of us has. I discovered that I have an extremely high threshold, as I was recently reminded. About 5 years ago, I was taken on a field far from the city. I was taken on a field far from the city. I was living in far from the city I was living in, houseless at that time, and beaten to death by 5 huge individuals with baseball bats. Oh my God, Robert, I am so sorry. Wow, I was left on the field, but I found my strength to get up and walk back into the city. Holy moly, Robert. Wow. What a blessing to all of us that you survived that. Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine. I'm so sorry that you had to experience that. What a nightmare. Wow. Wow. And it's remarkable to imagine that people do such things. That 5 people could even it's unfathomable to me that people do such things. Robert says, yes, I have many stories. I think you said that you were going to be writing a book, a memoir. Um, yeah, it sounds like insane stories. It's a nightmare. And those are the kinds of things. It's like coming back from that. How do you come back from that? It's remarkable and miraculous that you did. And Robert says, but I'm strong. I guess that was the moment of my rebirth. Wow, big time, big time. When you say beaten to death, did you have a near-death experience at that time, or a death experience? Um, it sounds like you have utilized it to the greatest possible degree to um, to embrace life. That's amazing, just amazing. So, wow. On that note, it sounds like you are strong beyond imagining, and I think that we have the capacity to survive so many things that we couldn't even imagine. Gia says, replying to Robert Dosa, oh my God, you are inspiring. I can't thank you so much for sharing this. How did you come back from there and still keep you, and what still keeps you going? I'm curious, trust me. Robert says, no, they just hit the body, not the face. I have only one scar on my left foot that doesn't want to go away. Wow. So that's remarkable, Robert. What a hero's tale you have, and truly, you are an inspiration. It's remarkable that you came back from that. Just remarkable. And Lisa says, "I am woman. Hear me roar." Yes, yes. I think a lot of us are roaring more now than ever before, and that's a wonderful thing. And on that note, you just inspire me so completely, and the candor with which you share your heart and your stories. Robert says, well, I wanted to quit this life then and there, but the man upstairs sent me back. Well, so and Robert says, I guess I still have my mission. Yeah, and maybe it's all the much stronger for what you've survived. You guys are remarkable. So, which after that moment has started your mission exactly, and that is completely transformative when we connect with our mission. It gives us a reason to live on a very profound level. And wow, we covered a lot of ground today, guys. I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. You're remarkable, and I'm gonna call it a day. Uh, I'm I'm speechless. What can I say? I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and Maggie and I go live each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. And I am so grateful to be in this community with you guys and sharing. There's still some more. Let's see. Robert says, I think I needed that as a wake up call. Well, that's one heck of a wake up call, Robert. And amazing. And Lisa says, please look up ordering your bird. Touching them in certain ways creates an issue until sexually matured, I think. Lisa, maybe you can please look up petting your bird. Touching them in certain ways creates an issue until they're sexually matured. Okay. I don't even know what to look up, Lisa. Maybe you can give me some guidance on that. And Gia says, Robert Dosa, of course you have a mission. One of it is what you shared here with us. Trust me, I'm so inspired by you. Can I connect with you? And Lisa says, please look up petting the bird. I will. Okay. And so Okay, got you, Lisa. I will check it out. Thank you so much. And have an amazing day, everyone. It's such a blessing to be with you, as I said. And until next time, check out the other wonderful programming on Enlightened World Network. And together we will navigate this bizarro world. I'm so glad to be in connection and having these wonderful conversations with you. Take care. Lots of love.